Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on the show. So, a lot happening in your world right now, and I can't wait
Yeah.
to hear the story. I bet. I can't wait to hear the story. But if you could just, with the audience, maybe tell us a little bit about your background.
My name is Anna Douglas, and I am a PhD candidate at Vanderbilt University in Nashville.
Okay.
And I recently moved to the Knoxville area to work full time on my startup, SkyNano. So I am a PhD candidate in material science at Vanderbilt, and I actually work for a professor of mechanical engineering. So I have finished 3 years there. I came actually from Lee University, also in Tennessee. So I'm
Okay.
just going back and forth between Central Tennessee and East. But yeah, so I guess I grew up in Northeast Ohio. I interned a little bit at NASA Glenn, which is in Cleveland, Ohio, during undergrad. I spent my summers at NASA and really fell in love with nanotechnology, fell in love with, the whole idea of something at the atomic scale being able to influence our missions in space, which are kind of, the biggest length scale. And that's really what led me to graduate school and has really given, me a passion for nanotechnology and has really spurred the startup, really.
Okay. So, lots of questions out of that. So, what got you to Vanderbilt? That was for undergrad first, and you're doing your PhD now, or where's your, tell me again where your undergrad was at?
My undergrad was at Lee University
Okay. And what was the focus there?
in Cleveland, Tennessee. I majored in math and chemistry.
Math and chemistry. Okay, and then you went over to Vanderbilt to do your PhD. So I'm curious. I've never talked to anyone that's sort of still doing your PhD at Vanderbilt, but you live here and you're at the
Yeah.
university in the lab a little bit. How does that work between doing that work? Is it just kind of a remote thing where you sort of report back to them or go occasionally? How is that working?
So I have finished 3 years at Vanderbilt, so I'm done with all my
I
classes. And
see.
this one is just research. And the research project I was working on and what I proposed for my dissertation is actually very well aligned with the startup I'm working on.
Okay.
So a lot of the core technology from the startup is from my research for my dissertation. So in a lot of ways, it's killing two birds with one stone.
I see.
It's getting some great entrepreneurial experience, learning how to manage projects from more of, a PI sort of standpoint rather than, just a graduate student. But yeah, I still communicate often with my PhD advisor, go back every once in a while. Actually, this Friday, I'm going back for a group lunch. So
Okay.
in and out, it's nice that they're close by.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So did you always have entrepreneurial inclinations, or tell me about sort of this journey, how it came to be?
Yeah, so truthfully, no, I did not. I definitely just went to graduate school thinking, I'm passionate about science, passionate about technology, and, didn't really have a great feel for what I wanted to do afterwards. But, I knew what I was good at and I knew what I was passionate about. So I just followed that and thought the rest would fall in place. And then, truthfully, it wasn't until this particular research project that I realized, we're onto something. This has some real commercial potential, some real market value. A lot of people would want the technology we're developing. And so it was really from that the startup was born.
Okay.
That's how the entrepreneurial journey started. So it was a little bit, I kind of backed into it from the project. But it's been great so far. I've certainly learned a lot. And, especially being here at Oak Ridge and the ecosystem here it's been great.
Sure. So yeah, really a lot of people don't. And that's one of the reasons we do the podcast is a lot of people don't recognize the ecosystem we have in Eastern Tennessee for startups and things. So, quick interesting note there. If you know Dan Close of 490 Biotech, he's been on the podcast. Tony Bova of Grow Bioplastics has also been on the podcast, and it seems a similar story for them too, where they were working on a solution from a research standpoint, then all of a sudden they went, "Wait a minute, there's a business opportunity here." And most entrepreneurs remember sort of that exact moment when they had that light bulb go off. Do you also have that memory, that distinct memory of, oh, wait a minute, this is something and I should pursue it?
So it wasn't necessarily one light bulb, but my advisor and I, work very closely together on the project, and he actually comes from a very strong carbon nanotube background. So, and that's the technology we're working on is with carbon nanotubes. So he's very familiar with the area, very familiar with, kind of what people are doing in the markets. And when he, really put two and two together about this project, he said, Anna, if you can meet some milestones technically, you could really have something here. And so it was just a conversation between the two of us that got me really excited about, there's something really tangible about seeing a research project get out of the lab and talk to real people who would pay for your solution. It's just not an experience that every graduate student gets. So I got excited about just having that different experience, and that's kind of really, it wasn't necessarily one light bulb, but
bit by bit over time, sort of kind of continue to grow on you. Like there could be something here. Why don't you run us through what the solution is and the pain point it solves?
Yeah, no, great. So the pain point is really that carbon nanotubes, which are an advanced material, are truthfully one of the most impressive and exciting materials on planet Earth. The problem is they're just really, really expensive. And so, like a lot of advanced materials, they're really limited right now in their use by their price. So you think about, carbon fiber. As a consumer, you typically associate carbon fiber with very high-end cars and very high-end and that sort of thing. It's similar with carbon nanotubes, but kind of on a different scale. So carbon nanotubes range from $100 a kilogram to $50,000 a gram.
Goodness.
And so it's really just, it's a big range, and it depends a lot on a lot of different characteristics. But people want these materials. They're just too expensive for most use. So our solution really is just a different way of making carbon nanotubes.
Okay.
And so we actually use atmospheric carbon dioxide as the carbon source, and we split carbon between, carbon and oxygen between two electrodes. And that's really our process. So the core chemistry has been around since about the 50s. People have been looking at this as a way of storing CO2 into, a stable form of carbon. But we really took a look at the system and said, well, we could structure that carbon in interesting ways and really get some great properties out of it that people are wanting now that we're, moving towards a lot of advanced materials. So that's kind of the core technology, and really it's a pricing.
So just trying to produce it in larger quantities and at a better price so that different companies can make use of it. So I imagine, are you working on a prototype of something that's actually collecting the carbon dioxide to turn into the solution?
Yeah. So right now we're working very much at a bench scale, in the lab. Not all nanotubes are created equal. There's very valuable nanotubes and not so valuable nanotubes. And so, we are really tuning the process to be able to make kind of the unicorn of nanotubes, which is called single wall carbon nanotubes.
Okay.
These are very expensive right now. And that's really our goal, is to be able to take this system and make, the creme de la creme of carbon nanotubes, using CO2 and electricity, and that's it. And it's an open system. It's extremely low cost. We could cut costs by anywhere from, 90% to, 99%.
Sure.
Compared to what people are normally doing right now. So it's very exciting.
It sounds like it. And you mentioned the use in space and NASA and things like that, but I imagine there's other uses. Can you give us some examples of how they might use the material?
Yeah, so aerospace is one place that's really exciting because they're very strong and they're very lightweight. So, weight savings for space and aviation applications is really important.
Absolutely.
But another one of their great properties is that they're very conductive. It's graphitic carbon, so it's quite conductive. And so because of that and because of their geometry, actually the use of carbon nanotubes as conductive additives in batteries is very exciting.
Interesting.
You can charge your battery faster, so therefore you can charge your cell phone faster, or other kind of big battery applications like electric vehicles and drones and things like that. So batteries is an exciting place. And then I'd say another really exciting application is in coatings. So they're very stable. They're very hydrophobic, so they're quite scared of water. So because of that, they can be used for a lot of coatings that can increase the lifetime of a lot of objects and surfaces.
So you've got commercial play opportunity, you've got consumer play opportunity. I'm curious, how have you worked through sort of where to put your focus? Because I'm sure it's hard to go after all of those at the same time.
Yeah. So right now, we have been trying to talk to customers in lots of different areas, but really trying to target customers who currently use carbon nanotubes, where it's not going to be quite such a far off dream for them to
Right. There's not this
place.
big educational curve on why they should use it, what they could use it for. They're already using it, and you're just coming in saying, hey, I can produce it at a much cheaper cost for you.
Right. So, number one, that improves people's bottom lines. Obviously, if they can get a material cheaper, it's great for everyone. But the really exciting part is that it can help a lot of our customers actually move into markets where, the margins are a little bit smaller, and previously at current price points of nanotubes, they wouldn't be profitable, but with such a dramatic price cut, they can actually be profitable in a bigger volume market. So one exciting example is, a lot of people are using this, nanotubes for aerospace applications, and we're talking deep space,
Right.
satellites, things like that. But there's a lot of applications for commercial aviation as well. The price points that you have to get to are just a lot tighter there.
Sure.
So, our technology could really be a solution for a large volume market that just has a little bit tighter margins. So stuff like that is very exciting to us.
So do you have to validate the use for it in these individual markets, or is it really just being able to produce it at a lower cost and saying, here, if you want it to be able to produce whatever your end product is, come and get it? Is that more of the position?
So every end user tends to have different types of tubes that they want. So our position really is to be able to be the expert in making nanotubes and to be able to make a wide range of
Perfect.
tubes, with various connectivities and surface areas and all different types of things like that. Different properties of tubes then will help each customer solve their problems.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing to move the venture forward. I know you're doing a lot of things. So, for example, I think Startup Day just happened, and you won an award there, didn't you? I want to say.
Yeah, I won crowd favorite, so I
Good,
came with $1,000.
good for you. Hey, it's all money that goes toward funding this thing along the way. Did
Yeah.
you? How did that feel? I mean, just getting the actual. I'm going to make a statement here, and I apologize, but I think there's a lot of people out there like me who are not science based, and so for the crowd to have voted what sounds to me a pretty technical solution to be
Yeah.
crowd favorites, really kind of cool. How did that feel?
On the one hand, I was just really proud of Knoxville. I felt like, oh my gosh, Knoxville loves science. This is exciting to be here in East Tennessee and have something so technical like carbon nanotubes resonate with a lot of people who've probably walked into the Bijou Theater never having heard of a carbon nanotube.
Absolutely.
But certainly at the same point, it was just really exciting to get some kind of validation of, people are excited about what we're doing. And it's not just the customers we're talking to who know carbon nanotubes and are excited about this process, but it's general public as well. People are excited about low-cost carbon nanotubes, but they're also excited about turning carbon dioxide into a useful material.
Interesting. I love the way
And
you put that.
yeah, and there's a lot of different technologies that use CO2 and try to transform it into lots of different materials, but a lot of times they're bottlenecked by, the price of or what the value of whatever you're making versus the cost of production sometimes doesn't add up. We're producing a very, very valuable material with CO2. So great. Economics work out very well. We don't need a carbon tax to make this profitable. But the other thing is we're turning this into something that is not going to be burned again, right? So a lot of people
Right.
take CO2 and turn it into fuels, which will be burned again and emit carbon. We're really trying to take CO2, turn it into something that then will actually be used to further reduce emissions, like weight savings on cars or,
Right.
batteries for grid scale energy storage or, a myriad of applications, which are all energy favorable.
So there is an environmental play to it too. Was that part of the original business model and plan, or did you kind of come upon, well, we're able to produce them pretty inexpensively, but that in and of itself creates this environmental benefit?
So the environmental benefit is a little bit of a cherry on top, truthfully. It doesn't
Sure.
necessarily add to our value proposition to our customers. They're happy that it's environmentally friendly, but most people in this space are not willing to pay extra for that.
Right.
But, it is certainly exciting for, when you think about chemical companies that have lots and lots of emissions, or other people like that who could maybe use carbon nanotubes, and buying them from a carbon-free kind of source, then can really help them.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about some of the other things you're doing to move the company along. And I must admit, I don't know the answers to these questions. Sometimes I do ahead of time, but this is our first chance to connect. Are you part of any other accelerator programs? I know you said you're at the lab. So how is that relationship?
Yeah, so I am actually in the first cohort of Innovation Crossroads.
You are in Innovation Crossroads. Okay, that's kind of where I was leading. I wasn't entirely sure, though. That's wonderful.
Yeah, so it's a lab-embedded entrepreneurial program for energy or advanced manufacturing type startups. And the idea is really to, people often talk about spin-outs, technology and companies from university or lab settings. This idea is actually to spin in to the national lab system and really be able to utilize the tools and the resources here at the lab. So that's especially important for a startup like mine, for example, where I have to use very expensive high power electron microscopes and all different types of materials characterization tools that are all available right here. And so there's a little bit of cost sharing that goes along with this program, and it's been a really great opportunity to get to work with some of the staff scientists here and really get some mentorship from the leadership here. It's been great.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Actually, Beth Connerty just is going to be the episode ahead of yours. So we talked about the program. So that I should have recognized that you were in there. I apologize. Head swirling a little bit. That's my understanding is the program comes with some really good benefits in terms of some capital to be able to use, and then research at the lab, and as you alluded to, the access to all those other resources and subject matter experts and things like that. Are you team of one right now, or is there anybody else involved?
My PhD advisor
Okay.
is also a co-founder, so he is still a full-time professor at Vanderbilt,
Sure.
but he contributes a lot in terms of the technical side and kind of the big vision for technically where we need to go. So right now it's us two, and we're looking to hire a fellow. Actually, the Department of Energy has put up funds for all the teams in Innovation Crossroads to hire a full-time fellow to work with us in the lab.
Okay.
So right now we're actually actively searching for someone for that. It would ideally be someone with an undergrad or master's kind of level graduate who, is interested either in entrepreneurship or also just in, working in a lab full time. Oftentimes a lot of undergrads don't get, that experience. So,
Right.
so this would be an opportunity for kind of a full-time 12-month dive in deep, get a lot of experience in the lab, and then it'd be a great stepping stone for graduate school or a job or things like that after.
Very interesting. Well, if we can, let's switch gears for a minute and talk a little bit more about your personal entrepreneurial journey. Curious, what's been kind of the hardest part of this so far?
So I would definitely say the hardest part of this so far is just figuring out what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And that sounds a little silly, but there's no handbook on this. There's no guidelines.
Right.
There's no roadmap. And so, really finding the right mentors and figuring out, what you're supposed to do and when you're supposed to do it. And everybody's startup journey is different, and that's because every company is different, right?
Sure.
So that's why there's no guidebook.
Right, absolutely. And I'd say from a mentor standpoint, the good news is it sounds like you have the whole technical side covered with your PhD advisor, but then you alluded to it, being in Innovation Crossroads, and I know Beth mentioned in her interview that there's that ability to bring in sort of the business mind to help kind of help from that aspect too. So it sounds like you're answering some of that with just having the right people, not necessarily always on the team, but also just around you and helping you guide you through it. I love your comment about each startup is different. It really is true. I mean, there's you can go look at all these ideas about how sort of steps that you're supposed to take, but each one is unique and sometimes skips this step and moves to the next. So there really is no true 100% set trail map for what you're supposed to do next.
Oh,
Has,
you're absolutely right. And it's very different, especially coming from an academic background. It's very different. It's pretty clear how to succeed as a graduate student. You know, you do your work, you publish papers, you go to conferences. It's very kind of clear how to do
right.
well. And that's not the case for startups. So that's certainly been a challenge, but it's also been very rewarding then when you get it right, you know, and you get some sort of validation. Oh, I think I'm doing the right thing, on the right path. You know, it's been very rewarding.
Would you say that reward has been the best part of being an entrepreneur, or are there other pieces of being an entrepreneur that you've really enjoyed?
I would say that's one piece of being an entrepreneur. Another piece, and actually probably the most rewarding thing for me, has truthfully been getting to interact with customers and hear that, you know, yes, actually what we're working on would solve a real problem with financial results and benefits for people, a real problem with, you know, social benefits for a lot of people, environmental benefits. Just hearing from people who have actual companies and have actual products, you know, that what we're working on can help them has been really beneficial. It's, you know, it's really not something you get as a graduate student, or if you're just working on a research project, you know, inside a lab or something like that. You really have to go out and talk to people to know what people want and what they're looking for, and, you know, what they're willing to pay for it and how it would benefit them.
Right.
And so getting that validation has been really, really rewarding.
Very, very cool. Curious, what's sort of the next couple of priorities ahead of you right now that you're working on?
So we technically, you know, just kind of have to get grinding in the lab and get going here. It's been, you know, a great summer for, you know, more of a slow start here at the lab and just getting all of our contracts approved and things like that, which has given us a lot of time to have those customer conversations and reach out to people. But yeah, just getting into the lab and kind of getting stuff done here to move the process forward and understand more at, you know, kind of a particle scale, what's happening scientifically in our system. And then kind of on the other side, at a large system scale, we're hopefully looking in the next, you know, 6 to 12 months-ish to actually design and build kind of a prototype benchtop reactor. So with that, then we would like to, you know, actually get material into the hands of these customers, you know, and get some early feedback. I think it's really important that, you know, we get feedback along the way, not just from conversations about price points and things like that, but actual, I'm going to give you some material, you're going to take it and use it and tell me what you think.
Right.
And then we can go back and tweak our process from there. So those are kind of technically the next steps that we're working towards. Like I mentioned, in terms of team, we're looking to hire the fellow for 12 months. And that could be, you know, someone to start as early as November, or it could be someone who's a senior right now and wants to start in May. Okay. So that's very flexible.
Interesting. All right. So if somebody wanted to learn more, either just about the company in general, or maybe someone is interested in being a fellow, as you talked about, where would they go to learn more about the company?
So we have a website. It's www.skynanotechnologies.com.
Okay.
My email is anna.douglas@skynanotechnologies.com.
Okay, two N's, right? Two N's in your first name.
Two N's, yes. One S in Douglas.
Right.
And there's a link to our website also on the Innovation Crossroads homepage.
Okay. Well, we'll be sure to link to all of that stuff. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing the story. I can't wait to hear what happens. I'm not sure I'll grasp all of it, but I can't wait to hear what happens.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you.